You got to figure out, why are they in front of you? Why now? What is their pain? What is their vision? And then what do they need? But I have to get them to start talking about all these things, you guys. If they're not saying, I can't say it. If I say it, I have to say it like 15 times for them to believe it. If they say it, they just have to say it once. So it comes down to asking the right questions, but you can only ask the right questions if you are actively listening and genuinely care to know more. What's the main role as a closer? Okay. Does anyone want to take a stab at it? Like, what's our main role?
I
It's
can
okay
go.
if you get it wrong. Actually, if you get it wrong, you should if you're new. What's our main role?
I can go.
Oh, sure, Kathy.
Yeah, it's honestly just to really guide them into change and just to serve them into making that change for themselves.
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit more concise. That's right on. We are problem solvers, right? Basically, that's what we're doing. We're solving problems that typically require change, right? So with change comes a lot of things, right? We get scared, we get fearful, all those feelings come in and they cripple people, including ourselves, right, guys? Whenever we're kind of going to change, it's uncomfortable and that produces fear, right? But our main job is we are problem solvers. That's the business that we're in. And the more, effective, the more efficient we are to solving problems, guess what? The more money we make. Okay? It's a direct correlation. All righty. So, how do we solve problems? What do we have to do to solve problems?
Ask
Anyone want?
questions.
Yes, yes, exactly. We have to ask the right questions, right? And how do we ask the right questions? We have to be genuinely curious. Okay. And the big word here, guys, is not curious, it's genuine. Okay. Because in order to be genuine, it has to convey like truthfulness, right? You have to really be curious. You have to really care to learn more about the person in front of you. You can't pretend, right? You can't pretend to care. You have to really understand to the fullest degree someone's situation. Okay. And so I always tell people I can teach you everything to closing. I can teach you the skill, all the science behind it. I can even help you with all the art on how to implement it. But the one thing I can't teach you is I can't teach you to care. So typically closers who don't close well, it's one of three things, right? They don't have the science, kind of what you're talking about, Fabiana, like not really knowing exactly what you're doing during this discovery to know when to actually appropriately transition, right? And then also it could be that you don't have the art. You might be saying things, doing things that are triggering sales resistance, offending people. So just kind of like, it had the tonality, the verbal language, just everything, right? That has to do with like the art of what we do. Or the next thing is you just really don't care and you're pretending, right? So you're kind of pretending to care to learn about their situation by implementing scripted questions. So when you implement scripted questions, you miss the mark because you'll get an answer, right, from the prospect, but you won't even know what to do with it because you're focusing more on your list of questions. So at that point, everything becomes transactional. We're gonna tap right into like what do you need to have during discovery? Okay, so why do we have to ask the right questions? What is the number one thing we have to have, both me, the prospect, and the closer, both of us, in order for a sale to be made? What do we have to have? There's one word. Does anybody know it? If you're with one CC,
Clarity.
yes, John, that's amazing. Have you gone through the framework for one CC?
I have.
Okay, you're a good student. Yes. I'm actually very
What
impressed.
what did he say?
Clarity. You have to have
Clarity.
clarity. Yes, absolutely. You have to have an absolute understanding of the entire situation of the prospect. Okay. So this is going to bring me to the next question. What is the number one skill that we need to have as a closer to get clarity? How do you know, like, to ask the right questions? You can only ask the right questions if you're what? If
Curious?
you're
Curious.
curious, but if you're actively listening.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And I know you guys, that sounds like, like no duh, like a no-brainer. Like you just have to listen. But let me tell you, active listening is rocket science. Okay. I cannot
Yeah.
tell you how many calls I've been on and like prospects. I mean, they're closable, but they don't get closed because The closer is missing all the marks because they're focused on a list of questions and they're not just listening and being in the moment and having a conversation and just genuinely being curious to learn more.
Like my problem, we were talking about curiosity, right? My problem, if anything, I'm too curious. Like
Okay.
I ask so many questions, I go so deep that the hour goes by and I haven't even started the pitch. So how do you
Okay.
control yourself from like sticking to the sticking to the script so that you don't deviate, so that you can finish in 30 minutes and have in 15
Yeah.
minutes for the pitch and the closing, because that's my biggest struggle.
How long have you been closing?
Not long. I mean, I've been closing for a year, but I was more of an
Okay.
order taker. Like actually
Okay.
closing, like managing objections and things, 2 weeks. But
Okay. So there's a couple things. In the beginning, it's very normal for calls to go 1 hour. Okay. They can even go to an hour and a half, but it's just because you're not, for one, you're not skilled yet, and then you haven't had enough repetitions in. So continue learning the skill. Everything we do is a skills game, right? So this is what I'll tell you. There's the start of a call, and then there's the close of the call where you collect the money. Okay, then there's like the setup, the discovery, the pitch, the asking, right? All in between. Your job as a closer is you have to stay in control of the call. Okay, so we'll go into clarity. I think somebody else, Fabiana, we'll go back into clarity and what that looks like. So we're going to talk about the main things that we need to know. We'll go over that in a second, okay? But your job is to keep them as close to the line as possible. If you deviate too much in sidebar conversation that's not helpful to the sale, all you're doing is you're going up here. And what happens is you start losing respect of the prospect, because when you start a call, you're equal. You're equal. But as you take control of the call, you ask the right questions, you add value, they start seeing you as an expert. So you're elevated, right? So now when you get into the pitch, you ask for the money, they're going to listen to you because they see you as an expert. As you deviate off the line and you go up, you're now becoming a friend, a confidant. Guess what? Friends have no problem telling their friends no. We're cool, right? You don't mind if I wait. I'll talk about it. I'll think about it. And now you're like, right? Because they don't see you as an expert. They don't see you as an authority figure, right? Now you're an equal to them, and now you've lost everything. Okay. I don't know about you. I don't want to work for free. Okay. So you just want to make sure that you're asking the right questions that are going to aid a sale, right? So for instance, I am a talker. Okay, I can talk to anybody about anything. I could disagree with you. I could agree with you. I don't care. I'm going to like you and we're going to talk. Okay, and we're going to get along and be good friends because that's just my personality. That's just who I am, right? I'm a people person. So when I first got on calls, I had the same problem. I would get in conversations and they said something about family. We get off script. I would join with them and I would think it was rapport building, but it wasn't. It was like, killing the sale. If they started talking about a divorce, I started getting into that. If they started talking about faith or God, it was that. It was political. And it was just like, whoa, right? So I had to rein things in. And to this day, I have to tell myself literally in my head as people are talking, I tell myself, it's not important, Marisa. Don't ask that question. It's not important. Just continue. Just continue. Because I'm a talkative person. So you probably will have to do that too. So when it comes to clarity, okay, what do we need clarity on? Once you hit clarity on these items, you're not talking anymore. And you're only going to talk about things that bring you clarity for these things. Okay. For one,
and
why are they in front of you? Why are they here? Right? Like, hey, Dan, like, looks like you might be interested in like starting I sell online businesses. So I sell coaching programs for Robbie Blanchard. He's the #1 ClickBank affiliate in the world. He sells programs, he sells coaching. So I sell anything between like 5,000 to like 25,000, 28,000. Okay. I do coaching programs. So, it's kind of like, hey, like, it looks like you might be interested in starting an online business. Like, curious, like what's led you to me? Like, what's your journey been like, right? I want to know why are they in front of me, right? So you got to know why they're in front of you. You got to figure out kind of like, as they're talking, like, oh, that's cool. It sounds like you're really motivated to start something online. Like, I'm just curious, like, what's motivating you to want to start something online? It looks like you're a really successful engineer. Like, why do you want to start an online business, right? I'm genuinely curious. If you're making good money and you're an engineer, why the heck are you trying to make another business? You're doing good. Just stick with what you're doing, your day job, right? So then when they start sharing that, well, yeah, I make great money, Marisa. I'm making $300,000 a year, but I'm working 80 hours a week. yikes, that sucks. You're not making that much money. $300,000 is a lot. But when you start saying 80 hours, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not a lot of money. You start doing the math and they're working for minimum wage. Right? So you start talking to them, you start realizing, okay, there's a problem to solve. There's a problem to solve. Okay, they're not happy. They're working around the clock. What's that costing them? What's the pain? We got to know their pain, right? So you have to know their vision. If there's no vision, there's no decision. Okay? Now you don't have to be all cheesy and tell them to close their eyes and where do you imagine to be? You can if you want to. I mean, I would be turned off if someone told me that. But I mean, you just kind of want to know where they wanted to go. Like, hey, like if you could snap your fingers 6 months, like where do you see yourself with this business? Where do you see yourself with your weight loss journey? Where do you see yourself with the proper coaching? Whatever that looks like, where do they see themselves? Because then you get an idea of like that they need coaching, right? They want to be making six figures. Well, guess what? You're not going to make six figures unless you accelerate your time. And the only way you can accelerate is you're going to have to get coaching to condense, to time collapse, right? So you got to figure out their vision, right? No vision, no decision, no pain, no gain. Okay? This guy is working 80 hours a week. That sucks. Just, oh my gosh, 80 hours. Like, are you married? Do you have kids? Oh my gosh, I'm a married person. That must be really tough, right? Whatever it is, you just get them to talk, but organically. I'm not being cheesy. Like I would genuinely tell somebody that because I'm a parent. I have a husband. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I'm a married person. Like, I don't know if I'd be very happy if my husband was gone 80 hours a week. How's your poor wife hanging in there? Right? And he's like, well, I'm actually on the verge of divorce. Oh my gosh. Right? That's even more pain, right? But it's organic. It's just a conversation, right? I'm joining with them. I'm bringing in like personal stuff, but I'm not getting off the sales trajectory. Okay? I'm not getting off of it. I'm staying on it, but it's all in the right direction, right? So you have to know why they're in front of you. Why now? Okay, this guy's on the front of me because, of weight loss, like, hey, like, you know what, Fabiana, it sounds like you've been, been 50 pounds, 60 pounds overweight for decades. I'm just curious, like, I'm not saying that because I'm just simply because you're doing fitness. Okay. I'm just curious, like, what even has you really wanting to take this serious right now? I have my daughter's wedding. I went to the doctors and I got a death diagnosis, whatever it is, right? I'm gonna, they told me I have I have high cholesterol, I have hypertension, I'm pre-diabetic, and they told me if I don't do something now, I'm gonna be doomed. But right now they told me if I take control of it, I can reverse all of this. You guys, that's a huge why now. Okay. So you got to figure out why are they in front of you? Why now? What is their pain? What is their vision? And then what do they need? So how do you figure out what they need? A couple things. You first have to figure out what they've already done. Okay, because sometimes they may not even know what they need. So you have to kind of play doctor here. Okay, you got to kind of come in and you have to kind of figure it out yourself and ask the right questions so they see it, right? So it could be they've tried a million other coaching programs, right? If you don't know what they've tried and you don't know what that coaching program looks like and you don't know why it failed, guess what? They're never going to buy from you because they're just going to feel like, hey, I've already invested in stuff just like this and I've gotten nowhere. They're going to blame themselves. And so they're never going to invest more money. So your job as a closer is to get them to externalize it. You don't want them to internalize their failure. So as they're talking and they say they did Weight Watchers or they did, the Atkins diet, you could say, oh my gosh, it sounds like you've done a lot of the crazy like fad diets. I've been there, done that. Just go, but they're just not sustainable, huh? No, they're not, right? So then you start getting them to start separating themselves from being the failure, but really it's the system that failed them, right? Sounds like, oh, so you did e-com. Oh, okay. Well, I get it. There's a lot more moving pieces, right? You have product. I could see how that could fail, right? So I'm externalizing their failure, right? I'm curious, like, what has you even interested in like affiliate marketing now? Sounds like you did e-com. Like, what has you like wanting to like attempt this now? And then you start finding out that, yeah, it's because it's a different system. There's no product, there's no tracking, there's no shipping, there's no customer service. So now we're getting somewhere, right? With what they want and then how it's different than what they already had. But I have to get them to start talking about all these things, you guys. If they're not saying, I can't say it. If I say it, I have to say it like 15 times for them to believe it. If they say it, they just have to say it once. Okay? So it comes down to asking the right questions, but you can only ask the right questions if you are actively listening and genuinely care to know more. Okay? You can't be listening to them talk and then be thinking, what's the next best question? Just ask questions based off of what they're saying. right? And that will organically lead you to the right next question. Okay, so you can't go into the pitch if you don't know where they want to go with their weight loss journey. You can't go into the pitch if you don't know why it's so important now in their life. You can't go into the pitch if you don't know what problem you're solving. Like, okay, how is my program different? How is this coaching program going to help them with other than their other coaching programs, right? Because then you don't even know what you're solving and you don't even know how you're going to pitch if you don't know what you're solving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like
As a closer, I don't care what you're selling, V-shred, coaching, I don't know, whatever it is, fitness, whatever it is. Your prospects are all the same, right? They're all in front of you. They all want the same things. They all have the same problems and challenges and insecurities and self-doubt. They have all of it, right? So as a closer, you just have to be ready. You have to know how to answer all these questions and you have to not be able to think. You have to just be ready. Go, go, go. Because if you pause, if you hesitate, if you're not confident, guess what? You start to over talk. You start to over explain, which triggers what? Further insecurity in your prospect, which reinforces why they shouldn't jump. Right? It's like, it's like a unconscious process that happens between you and the closer. So when they ask questions, when you get objections, you have to just be ready, like clockwork. And the only way you do that is you have to be willing to prepare. So what I would do in the beginning, I was a crazy lady. I had Post-its and I had paper everywhere. Literally, I had it taped on the side of both of my mouses. I had it taped at the bottom. I had them taped on the side. I had them taped on top. So when people were talking, I kind of would just kind of like know like what section to kind of like eyeball for what objection. I would write quotes. I know nothing I say is like, I'm not very innovative, you guys. Okay. I'm not that great. I'm great at a lot of things. I'm not innovative. Okay. But I can take something and I can make it better than it was. That's a gift I have. So if I can just get something from somebody and kind of get like the bones of it, I can then take it to the moon. So I encourage you to do the same thing. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just use what's been working and make it your own and make it better. Okay. And then just practice it, practice it. I talk in the mirror. My kids always tell me when I'm driving, Mom, you're talking to yourself. I'm like, no, guys, I'm just rehearsing things that I use on calls. And they're like, oh, okay. But I'm always trying to learn and just kind of memorize what I'm doing.